The pyramids exist, yet the official explanation for how they were built doesn't fully work. Everyone knows the pyramids. They're in textbooks, on postcards, a settled fact of history. We're told they were built in ancient Egypt, by humans, using simple tools. That story feels complete and comfortable, but what happens when you slow down and really look at the details? Today, we're not going to invent a new story, we're just going to carefully examine the one we've all been told. We'll look at the sheer number of workers required, the mystery of the quarried stones, the mind-boggling precision, and the ultimate purpose of these structures. By the end, one thing becomes clear: the pyramids remain one of the greatest unexplained mysteries. Let's start with a simple question: who built them? The official history gives credit to the ancient Egyptians, and on the surface, that seems perfectly reasonable. But when you dig a little deeper, the timeline presents a puzzle. The grandest, most impressive pyramids were built very early in the dynastic period. We're talking about the Old Kingdom, thousands of years ago. Now, here's the strange part. What did the later Egyptians build? Smaller pyramids, less precise structures, and eventually, they stopped building pyramids altogether, opting for rock-cut tombs. Think about that for a second. In almost every field of human endeavor, progress moves forward. We build on the knowledge of those who came before us. We improve techniques, we refine our skills, we create bigger and better things. But with the pyramids, the trend is reversed. The scale and precision actually decrease over time. It's as if they lost the instruction manual. If the early Egyptians developed this incredible knowledge and these advanced construction techniques themselves, why did that knowledge just vanish? Skills of that magnitude don't simply disappear from a civilization overnight. It's like if we suddenly forgot how to build skyscrapers or launch satellites. It just doesn't make sense. Unless, of course, the conditions that made such construction possible changed dramatically. Or, and this is a fascinating possibility, perhaps that initial burst of knowledge wasn't developed locally from scratch. Maybe it was inherited from an even earlier unknown source. This isn't an accusation against the official story, it's simply an observation, a question that arises when you see progress moving backward. What really happened in the deserts of Egypt all those thousands of years ago? The stones themselves seem to be asking us to look closer. The Great Pyramid of Giza, it stands as a monument to human achievement, a symbol of ancient Egypt that has captivated us for millennia. When you visit a museum or watch a documentary, you're usually told a very specific story. The pyramids were tombs for the pharaohs, built around 4,500 years ago by tens of thousands of workers. They used simple tools, copper chisels, stone hammers, and brute force. They moved massive stone blocks on wooden sleds and dragged them up enormous ramps. This explanation is presented with such confidence, repeated so often, that we've come to accept it as fact. But repeating something doesn't make it true. What happens if we step back and look at the evidence with fresh eyes? What if we question the story we've been told? Let's calmly examine the official explanation, piece by piece, and see if it holds up to scrutiny. When we do, we find that the neat and tidy story starts to unravel, revealing a mystery far deeper and more complex than we ever imagined. Let's start with one of the biggest challenges: the labor. The official story says that tens of thousands of workers, some estimates say 20,000, others up to 40,000, toiled for decades to build the Great Pyramid. Now, let's do some simple math. The Great Pyramid is made of roughly 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing several tons. The accepted construction timeline is about 20 years. If you break that down, it means a block had to be quarried from the bedrock, transported to the site, shaped with incredible precision, and lifted into its final place every few minutes. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 2 decades straight, without any major delays. Think about the logistics of that. Feeding, housing, and managing a workforce the size of a small city. Coordinating the non-stop flow of materials. This wasn't just piling up rocks. It was a feat of engineering and project management that would challenge even our modern, industrialized society. To suggest that this was accomplished with simple hand tools and ramps pushes the boundaries of what seems possible. This extreme pace doesn't automatically disprove the official theory, but it certainly puts immense pressure on it. And under pressure, weak points begin to show. So let's talk about the tools. We retold the ancient Egyptians used copper chisels and stone dolerite pounders to quarry and shape millions of blocks. Copper is a relatively soft metal. Have you ever tried to cut granite with a copper tool? Modern experiments have shown that it's an incredibly slow and inefficient process. The copper tools wear down almost immediately. You'd need a constant supply of newly forged chisels just to make a dent. And it's not just about cutting the blocks out of the quarry. The precision is astonishing. The casing stones of the Great Pyramid were so perfectly fitted that you could unslide a razor blade between them. How is this level of precision achieved on an industrial scale with soft copper tools? And what about the dolerite pounders? These are hard, rounded stones. Imagine trying to create a perfectly flat, smooth surface on a massive granite block by just bashing it with another rock. It seems more likely to shatter the block than to shape it. The tool explanation feels like trying to build a modern skyscraper with a hammer and a screwdriver. It's not that it's completely impossible, but it just doesn't seem like the most logical or efficient way to do the job, especially given the results. Then we have the problem of the ramps. The most common theory is that a giant, straight ramp was built up one side of the pyramid, but to reach the top of the Great Pyramid, a ramp with a gentle, manageable slope would have to be over a mile long. The amount of material needed to build such a ramp would be enormous, possibly even more than the pyramid itself. And then, after construction was finished, where did all that material go? There's no archaeological evidence of such a massive structure. Another popular idea is a spiral ramp that corkscrewed around the outside of the pyramid. This solves the material problem, but it creates new ones. A spiral ramp would have made it nearly impossible to survey the corners and keep the pyramid's geometry perfect. The corners are incredibly precise. Any external ramp would have blocked the lines of sight needed for that kind of accuracy. Some have proposed internal ramps, but again, the evidence is scarce and debated. Every ramp theory we have comes with significant engineering and logistical problems that aren't easily solved. We have the finished pyramid, a masterpiece of engineering, but we have no clear evidence-based answer for the most fundamental question. How did they get the stones to the top? So, where does this leave us? We have a timeline that requires an industrial pace, tools that seem inadequate for the task, and transportation methods, like ramps, that have no physical evidence and present huge logistical problems. The official explanation, while simple, feels strained. It asks us to accept a series of best-case scenarios, and incredible feats of labor without providing solid, verifiable proof for the methods used. Questioning this narrative isn't about disrespecting the ancient Egyptians. In fact, it's the opposite. It's acknowledging that their achievement was so incredible, so far beyond what we think should have been possible for their time, that perhaps we are missing a key piece of the puzzle. Maybe their tools were more advanced than we think. Maybe their methods were more ingenious than we can currently imagine. The pyramids exist, that is a fact, but how they were built remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. And maybe, just maybe, the answers are still waiting to be discovered, buried not in the sand, but in the inconsistencies of the story we've been telling ourselves for generations. Have you ever really thought about the stones used to build the Great Pyramid? I mean, really thought about them? Let's talk about the materials for a second. We know they used limestone, and those blocks weighed anywhere from 2 to 15 tons each. Imagine lifting just one of those. But here's where it gets truly mind-boggling. They also used granite, huge blocks of granite, some weighing over 70 tons. And this granite didn't come from just down the road. It came from Aswan, which is over 800 kilometers, or 500 miles away. That's not a theory, that's just geography. You can look it up on a map right now. Now let's talk about the tools. The accepted story is that the ancient Egyptians used copper tools, but here's the problem. Granite is significantly harder than copper. Trying to cut granite with a copper chisel is like trying to cut a diamond with a plastic knife. Your tools would become dull almost instantly. The official explanation suggests they used other methods, like pounding the granite with harder stones, like dolerite, and using sand as an abrasive to slowly grind it down. Think about that process. Pounding and grinding, over and over, just to make one cut. Yes, it can work, but it's incredibly slow and inefficient. You'd need immense patience and control to achieve the precision we see in the pyramids. Now, multiply that painstaking process by the thousands of granite blocks used in the construction. The King's Chamber, for example, is almost entirely built from these massive, precisely cut granite blocks. The sheer amount of time and manpower required would be staggering, almost beyond comprehension. This brings up a fundamental question that often gets overlooked. Why use granite at all? Why go through all that trouble? Limestone was readily available right there at the Giza Plateau. It's much softer and easier to work with. Choosing granite, a material so difficult to quarry, transport over 800 kilometers, and shape with such precision, seems like an intentional choice to make the job harder. When you see a deliberate choice for difficulty, it suggests there was a very specific purpose. They didn't just want to build something big. They wanted to build it with a material that had specific properties. What was so special about granite? Was it for strength, durability, Or was there another reason, something we haven't fully understood yet? The conventional narrative tells us it was a combination of brute force, simple tools, and an almost limitless supply of labor. But when you stand back and look at the evidence, the scale, the precision, the material choice, it's hard not to wonder if there's more to the story. Are we missing a piece of the puzzle? Perhaps the ancient builders had knowledge or techniques that have been lost to time. Thinking about the granite problem doesn't mean you're a conspiracy theorist. It just means you're thinking critically about one of the greatest engineering marvels in human history. The questions are valid, and the answers might be more incredible than we can imagine. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about the purpose problem. The official explanation is simple. The pyramids were tombs for the pharaohs. That's what you'll read in most history books. Inside the Great Pyramid, there's a strange emptiness. Where are the bodies? The pharaohs themselves have never been found within these massive structures. And it's not just the bodies. Ancient Egyptian tombs, like those in the Valley of the Kings, are filled with incredible treasures and grave goods. But when we look at the evidence, a huge piece of the puzzle is missing. These were items the deceased would need in the afterlife, everything from furniture and food to jewelry and chariots. The Great Pyramid. It was found almost completely empty. The few items discovered, like the contents of the so-called Dixon relics, don't look like typical grave goods at all. This brings us to another major issue, the lack of inscriptions. Known Egyptian tombs are like beautifully illustrated stories. Their walls are covered in hieroglyphs, intricate paintings, and religious texts like the Book of the Dead. These inscriptions tell us who the tomb belongs to. They detail the person's life, and they provide spells and guides for their journey into the afterlife. They are deeply personal and highly specific. Now, compare that to the Great Pyramid. What do we find inside its main chambers, like the king's and queen's chambers? Bare, undecorated stone walls. There are no hieroglyphs naming Khufu as the occupant. There are no burial texts. There are no elaborate scenes of gods and goddesses. It's a stark, silent, and anonymous space. That absence of decoration is a massive clue. It's completely out of character for a pharaoh's final resting place. Why would the most magnificent structure ever built for a king lack the most basic elements of a royal tomb? The only markings found that even mention Khufu are some crude, graffiti-like symbols hidden away in small, inaccessible chambers above the king's chamber. Many experts believe these were simply quarry marks. Notes made by the work crews, not the grand royal dedication you'd expect. The silence of the Great Pyramid is deafening, and it directly challenges the idea that it was just a tomb. So, if it wasn't a tomb, what was it? This is where we need to look at the pyramid's internal features. This wasn't just a big pile of stones. The interior is a marvel of engineering and precision. We have incredibly long, narrow shafts, some only about 8 inches wide, that extend through hundreds of feet of solid masonry. They are angled with incredible accuracy, pointing towards specific stars or constellations. Why would a tomb need star-aligning shafts? Then there are the chambers themselves, placed with breathtaking mathematical care. The dimensions of the king's chamber, for example, appear to incorporate advanced mathematical concepts. The whole structure seems to be a carefully designed system. We have to ask a simple, logical question. Why would a burial chamber require such mind-boggling complexity? In architecture and engineering, complexity almost always serves a specific function. A simple box is all you need for a burial. But the Great Pyramid is anything but simple. The strange acoustic properties, the precise alignments, the complex internal layout, none of these features make sense for a simple tomb. They point towards a different purpose, a purpose that might be far more advanced and mysterious than we've been led to believe. The official story just doesn't add up. The pyramid itself is telling us there's more to discover, if we're willing to listen. Let's look beyond the sheer size and focus on something even more mind-boggling, the precision. First, let's talk about alignment. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to true north with an accuracy that is, frankly, astonishing. We're talking about a margin of error of just a few arcs. To put that in perspective, this is more precise than many modern buildings constructed with all our advanced technology. And this isn't speculation, it's a measurable fact. Surveyors have confirmed it time and time again. Then there's the foundation. The base of the Great Pyramid covers over 13 acres, yet it is almost perfectly level. Across this vast area, the difference in elevation from corner to corner is just a matter of centimeters. Imagine trying to achieve that today, even with laser levels and sophisticated equipment. On top of that, the 4 corners of the base are nearly perfect 90-degree right angles. So, the big question is, how? The standard narrative suggests they used simple tools and sheer manpower. But how do you align a massive structure to true north so accurately without a compass as we know it? How do you level such a huge area with such precision without GPS or laser technology? These are not trivial details. In construction, precision is intentional. It requires planning, knowledge, and advanced techniques. A small error at the start would be magnified into a huge mistake by the time you reach the top. Yet, the errors in the Great Pyramid are minimal. This level of precision is not just impressive, it's an anomaly. It points to a level of geometric and astronomical knowledge that is far beyond what we typically attribute to ancient civilizations. Were they using methods we've lost to time? Did they understand the geometry of our planet in a way we're only now rediscovering? The existence of this precision is undeniable. The explanation for it, however, remains one of history's greatest unanswered questions. Why this still matters, this discussion is not about mystery alone. It is about method. When explanations strain, we must re-examine assumptions. The pyramids still stand. They are measurable. They are physical. Stone does not exaggerate. History should follow evidence, not comfort. Unanswered questions are not failures. They are invitations. Thank you for watching. If you found this intriguing, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's biggest questions.